where he tells you, so I'll just roll this and then roll the clip right after, that children, don't worry, children are not eligible for any kind of medical intervention.
But to hear some tell it as soon as a child declares themselves trans.
I love that they have to add these, you know? They're always like, so here's the claim, bro, and now destroyed with facts and science. Look, I've got an article where it turns out that, like, a young girl was sexually assaulted by a trans girl. And then it's like, first Google search is like, oh, that actually never happened. At that time, construction was going down, so they were actually being escorted, and there would have not been an opportunity for this assault to happen. We can't find evidence of it. It's not true. Never happened. It's like, yeah, truth, bro. You just got truthed. I think Crowder won.
Americans seem to be way better at baseball than anybody.
Yeah, well, that's all.
Oh, this is where I found that clip, by the way. He was doing this race science stuff.
Boys, they're just a complete... You just talk about how rich his dad was and piss people off.
Can we acknowledge genetics as it relates to, as it relates racially when it comes to athleticism?
Can we acknowledge genetics as it relates to race, racially? They're just better. They're better. What can I say?
The better black people tend to be very good at a lot of these sports.
It's a
meritocracy.
Exactly.
Dominicans seem to be way better at baseball than anybody.
Yeah, well, that's often because they're like dad places them in a closet and beats them for weeks on end.
Well,
hey, whatever
21,
works.
Yeah, they're 20.
Hey, you got racial science to start out the show. So they're definitely going to be fact-based as they talk about, the John Oliver stuff. How far do we have to go?
A form of humiliation that there is.
Wow, he's walking human clickbait. Got humiliated, absolutely smashed by this girl who shot this
That's not the dialect. What are you doing?
assistant manager at Hot Topic.
Is he watching a different clip than we were? Nobody owned anybody in that clip. They just said, no, it's not a problem. And I'm like, okay, thanks.
You're fear-mongering. Here are some anecdotal examples of
Right.
largely white women who don't care, who don't compete in sports, who don't really have a dog in this fight. Oh, you just got owned.
Are you competing in women's sports? Stephen Crowder? Is that what's happening? I didn't know that. I'm very happy for you. This is a hell of a revelation. Because if you aren't, then what exactly is your dog in this fight? I'd like to ask. Why do you want to interject yourself into the healthcare of children? Children who are strangers, children who are not your kids. Why do you want to get involved in their healthcare? It's super weird and gross. You should probably just leave them kids alone, you know?
Here's the truth. If we're going to go to the anecdotal, there are far more examples of it being a problem than a few people who speak at a podium there. Guy literally dressed as a girl sexually assaulted a girl in Loudoun County. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And the father was arrested because he was speaking out against.
Oh, so I'll see your anecdotes and raise you anecdotes. Yeah. What, you got some anecdotes there? Don't worry, I got the cure for you. More anecdotes. How about that? Yeah, didn't think I'd have anecdotes, did you?
Because the school board basically covered it up. In Brevard County, in Florida, a girl accused of trans.
Amid hotly disputed claims, a transgender student sexually assaulted a girl in the women's washroom at Johnson Middle School. An investigation of another incident where a girl claimed she was groped in a different school restroom by a transgender girl that led to no charges being pressed. Brevard's public schools braced for new potential regulations to bathroom access by transgender students. Available at Louder with Crowder. Not at
Female of groping her in the bathroom.
I just want to look at these stories. And yeah, I think there's probably going to be examples of people who have committed bad acts, shall we say. They're not universally going to be committed. In fact, they're rarities when it comes to trans people committing either assaults. Trans people are more often the victim of sexual assaults than the perpetrators. Johnson Middle School incident trans. What's the... Oh. Weird. I wasn't expecting that so quickly. I thought there'd be more. I thought there'd be more of a fight, more of a challenge here. I thought this was gonna have to be one of those things where I'm like, well, what Stephen Crowder's doing here is he's basically picking and choosing very specific examples where, yes, someone may have done something that's wrong. I'm not going to defend these actions. This is, in this case, a sexual assault, but this is not something that is pervasively. You have to look at the data. Is it overwhelmingly happening, or are these just anecdotes to fearmonger? Because that's all the right has. It's like there are, yes, this one example or this other one example where this happened. There's thousands of examples of cis dudes. It's predominantly cis cis men who molest women in women's bathrooms, both cis and trans women, by the way. It's cis dudes doing that. It's overwhelmingly the vast majority is cis men. It's like no other group even comes close. So if you cared about this, if you cared about women's washrooms, you would obviously go after these stories and go after this really big phenomenon, and you would tackle the things that matter, not just like the things to scare people that aren't really huge problems. But it turns out in this case, I don't even need to do that one. Reports echoed by State Representative Randy Fine and Representative Palm Bay that a girl was sexually assaulted by a trans student in the bathroom at Johnson Middle School are false, according to Brevard Public School spokesman. Reports of the alleged incident began circulating on Wednesday. On Thursday, a fine in the letter of the Educational Commissioner Manny Diaz referenced reports that an unnamed transgender student granted access to the girls' bathroom at the school had allegedly assaulted a female student sometime over the summer. The letter provided to the media around the state asked Diaz to investigate the case. Over the past several days, multiple parents have approached me with the claim that over the summer, a boy claiming to be a girl taking advantage of an open bathroom policy championed by the school board sexually assaulted a young girl in the girls' bathroom at Johnson Middle School. These parents looking to protect their children have made queries about the school district, including public records, to get to the bottom of what happened. Thus far, they have been stonewalled at every turn. PPS spokesman Russell Brunn said no such incident occurred. Students at Johnson Middle School over the summer were escorted by adults to the bathroom due to ongoing construction and because the students at the school came from all over the district and were unfamiliar with the layout, Brunn said. He called the letter a waste of the commissioner's time. It did not happen. Oh, Crowder. Fucking shameless.
Plenty of other girls, I think we have a clip, have expressed issues and fears and outrage at trans bathroom policies. What happened to Leave All Women?
Yeah, but you are the one stoking those fears. I'm not saying that women who, again, are often the victims of sexual assault and oftentimes probably will be afraid about being sexually assaulted in environments they do not feel safe in, that is 100% true. You are manipulating those fears to make them afraid of trans people because you hate trans people. So you want to make women think, this is what plays and really hard into like TERF rhetoric as well, make them think that the biggest predators coming after them are trans women. Like trans women are these massive predators and they're getting into spaces that other predators were never able to get into. There was an invisible barrier that prevented cis dudes from ever entering a woman's washroom and sexually assaulting a woman. There was just no way they could ever accomplish it. But now that they have this pass, because we as a society has lost our minds, then now these events are happening very rapidly. Whereas, again, the data, if you actually look at the data, not the one or two isolated incidents that Stephen Crowder's making up in this case, but even then, if he wasn't making it up, and yes, there's examples of, sexual assaults that occur within many different groups, the overwhelming amount of the people perpetrating the sexual assaults are cis men, like you and me. We are the overwhelming majority of people who commit sexual assaults. Now, I wouldn't even use that data, by the way, to suggest that all men are predisposed to sexual assaulting or that all men are bad. That's fucked up as well. I don't think that. I think that in the cases where people have acted inappropriately, we can look at the data to recognize why exactly it is that these groups are being really overrepresented and what we should do if we do want to protect people. If you do care about women, only cis women, apparently, only people he cares about, but if you do care about protecting and infantilizing cis women, because that's also a thing you seem to do, then ultimately you should be looking into the problems that face them, not the ones that you're making up or trying to amplify as like the very scary thing.
Being a girl is not all in my head. Boys who identify as girls are no different from boys who identify as boys, except in their feelings about themselves. But feelings are not why we have separate bathrooms. We have separate bathrooms because of what our bodies do in them. Bodies matter. Calling girls bigots because they don't want to use the toilet in a stall next to a boy or get undressed next to a boy is cruel and wrong. It is embarrassing enough for a girl to change a pad knowing all the other girls can hear the crinkle of the packaging. But telling her that she must be okay doing it in the presence of boys because their preferred pronouns are she, her, how evil can you be?
Now, notice even the difference in the way that the...
Now, I got some questions. First question. Is that happening? Is that a really big thing that's happening in schools? Are they forcing young girls to undress in front of young boys? Is that a giant phenomenon? And this is just something that the school boards are pushing on people Or is that something that is being amplified by the far right as a thing that's happening when it's not actually happening? Because it seems overwhelmingly when you see the testimonies of trans people, they're not advocating that they want to go watch women undress or stuff like that. They're actually advocating that their lives are very hard, and sometimes they just hold in their urine all day because they're too embarrassed to go to the bathroom because of how they're treated. It seems like it's that. Seems like it's a very uncomfortable situation to be in. Seems like almost a form of torture, that it continues to be something in which people are like, oh, well, fucking, you know, we can't let you use that bathroom. If we do that, you know, who knows what could happen? The sexual assaults will commence, like, on the spot. So that's a big problem there.
The children who lean right and the children who lean left argue. She doesn't just to appeal to emotion. She says biologically they are the same. That is correct. Biologically they are the same regardless of how they identify.
Yeah.
It is not something that just exists in your head. It is something that takes place in the body. That is scientifically, that is factually correct. The girls he presented said, who are you to tell me what I think? We're not telling you what you think. We're telling you that you're a young girl who can't think straight, and we're going to think for you as we do in all other scenarios with young girls and boys.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't
Well, at least they're consistent. Got that.
care if you're comfortable with it. I really don't. Like, this one girl you bring up says, well, I've used it next to transgenders. Fine, you're comfortable with it. Now let's line up all the girls who are not comfortable with it, just like this one.
They don't forfeit their rights because you have an uneducated opinion. I'm fine with blacks not being able to vote, said that reporter.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I could just end the clip there, and then someone would be like, whoa, what the context? I was like, yeah, but you got to admit, I'm guessing when the cameras are off, that one doesn't need context. It's just kind of like, it just stops there, you know, in his everyday life. Like when the show's over, he's like, oh, I'm actually fine with blacks not being able to vote. I would prefer that. I think that's a better system for everyone, just to, you know, make sure that we, the dominant white superstructure, maintain control over the rest, just to make sure everything works out, you know?
To that head coach.
Yeah.
That's not how
So
we
why
do
do
things.
you have a problem with it? Well, doesn't matter.
Well, the girl makes a very well-educated, honest point.
And you know what's fucked up about this crew? Because they're still obsessed with kids and kids' bathrooms and making sure they control what happens in kids' bathrooms, which again is just really fucked up, weird behavior. But ultimately, what are we talking about here? Because in situations where I've discussed this with like the right before and been like, well, what if there was a unisex bathroom? What if there was a bathroom in which the door just closes? People can do what they wanted there. One person uses it at a time, or you build multiple unisex bathrooms, stuff like that. You can also have still the large men's bathroom, the large women's bathroom. But would you even allow that? Would you even allow for that one extra thing, that one extra step? And then it's like, no, not even that. We're not giving you an inch. You don't get anything. You trans kids, you.
Point, and the other ones just showed up like Cartman, like, I'll do what I want. It's my body.
I'm more concerned if I'm going to pass Spanish.
Mom!
His Cartman voice is just his regular voice. I just realized, you know, English people have to sound like this. But for Steve Crowder, it's like, oh, this is my Cartman.
Because he makes the claim right before refuting himself. Must be nice to live in a world where you don't get called to the mat on anything. Where he tells you, so I'll just roll this and then roll the clip right after, that children, don't worry, children are not, they're not eligible for any kind of medical intervention.
But to hear some tell it as soon as a child declares themselves trans.
I love that they have to add these, you know? They're always like, so here's the claim, bro, and now destroyed with facts and science. Look, I've got an article where it turns out that, like, a young girl was sexually assaulted by a trans girl. And then it's like, first Google search is like, oh, that actually never happened. At that time, construction was going down, so they were actually being escorted, and there would have not been an opportunity for this assault to happen. We can't find evidence of it. It's not true. It never happened. It's like, yeah, truth, bro. You just got truthed.
There is an immediate, irreversible surgical decision undertaken, and there just isn't. So let's break down exactly what gender-affirming care consists of. To be very clear, prepubescent children are not eligible for...
By the way, the Steven Crowders, they're so far gone, right? They're living in this kind of like phrenology style, you know, that's their levels of scientific understanding of the world. IQ is real. We have to basically separate all the races based on their intelligence quotient and all this kind of stuff. That's where they're at. So you're never going to convince them. Why this was awesome, the whole John Oliver special, was because there's so many people, especially even liberals and people who are like, I'm for trans rights, where their activism stops at a certain point where it's like, yeah, but can we just stay away from the kids? It's going too far? You know, have we gone too woke? What's going on here? Just keep them out of sports. Just keep them out of the prisons. Just keep them out of the shelter. You know, just stuff like that. Because I think ultimately, I am worried a little bit just that they could be like super predators or something. So can we just, you know? So this was really, really good because he goes through a lot of the things that people have in terms of like when it comes to gender affirming care. I found like family members who are like, I'm trans rights totally. Just like I think stay away from the kids, you know, and like that's usually the toughest one because like you can start giving them overwhelming amounts of data, but then they'll bring up things like, well, I heard because Sweden says that there's chemical castration going on that it's probably dangerous for the kids to take it. I just don't know enough about it. It sounds experimental, you know, it's all very experimental. And then why should they be like, you know, the guinea pigs, stuff like that.
Medical interventions.
Like I'm just saying well-to-do libs, like well-to-do as in like I'm for trans rights, but it stops here, right? It's like because that's the limits I think of your understanding of these topics. Like everyone else, you know, myself included, at a certain point you have to be like, well, I don't truly get it, and then you have to like read more about it. So that both the Stewart and the Oliver specials were really good to appeal to that demographic who might be like, oh shit, oh I did not know that, cool.
And then immediately goes into talking about medical intervention and advocating for it on a legislative level. This is what happens right after that clip.
At the onset...
It's the opposite. It's preventing you from passing legislation that intervenes in the healthcare and medicine of children. Because that's what's happening. That's what Republicans are doing. They're saying that we are going to step in, the state is going to step in and prevent the healthcare of children. Some healthcare is okay. We allow for these things, and then there's other ones that we're going to prevent. We're not making these decisions based on the scientific community, based on every major medical association in the United States. None of that. We're ignoring that, and we've got about 3 or 4 quacks that we're going to use as our references, and then that's how we're going to make a decision, which is going to be in the interest of the healthcare of your children.
Of puberty. An adolescent and their family might consider puberty blockers, hormones that delay puberty, and importantly, if that treatment is suspended, then puberty will resume, meaning that this is reversible. Think of it like a pause button, the thing you can't do easily on the HBO Max app. Now, the next potential medical intervention is usually hormone therapy, which boosts levels of testosterone or estrogen. Opponents of gender-affirming care make a lot of alarmist claims about hormone therapy, from saying that it's experimental, which it is not, to arguing that it sterilizes people. And look, for some...
No one said it didn't exist. What are you talking about? It's been a part of the conversation for a very long time. Who said hormone therapy didn't exist? Are you? Is that as in like it's not given to children? Is that it? Because it's not given to children. As he's going to explain it to you in very plain English, it can be a part of later transitional therapy.
Specific situations, there can be risks to fertility, but for others, the effect is anticipated to be reversible if the medication is discontinued.
Okay, couple of things. He acknowledges it there, doesn't give you the actual severity of it. Right, he says, experimental, which it's not. Hold on a second. Birth control isn't considered experimental.
Why does he keep doing like a chimney sweep? Oh, hello. It's me, John Oliver. Oh, it's just been such a hard time. Oh, I need my porridge and me pudding. Oh.
Is it for 9-year-olds? That's the shit he's pulling here. Yeah. Of course. Testosterone for people who are older. And I've talked about this.
Testosterone is given sometimes in cases, extreme cases, they can be rare, but cis children have had hormone therapy before. You had no problem. You didn't want to involve yourself in the state there. There are conditions that cis people can have. They can overproduce certain hormones, and that can cause a lot of complications. It can cause people to age rapidly, for example. That is a problem that happens very early in life. There are specific cases in which the doctor may intervene or at least recommend, he won't force anyone to do anything, but he will state, yes, your child is rapidly aging because of this very rare condition that they have. They are overproducing this hormone. We can give them puberty blockers and we can give them hormone therapy to try and slow that process. That's something that we can offer you based on our assessment of what is happening here. And again, Steven Crowder wouldn't be jumping in the middle there. How are you doing this?
Advocate for it if you're older. Get your hormones checked. If you're in your 50s, your 60s, and you're not feeling well, yes, that is something which, by the way, unfortunately, the medical community in many cases does consider it experimental. Because we think it may have some negative effects. When you ask them about estrogen injected directly into a child, however, oh, no, it's not experimental. Yes, it is. There are plenty of things that are not experimental for adults that would be experimental with children. For the same reason they can't
Well, how are you defining experimental? As in like it hasn't been done before, or these procedures haven't been done? There's like overwhelming amounts of data on this now. These aren't new things. It's not like this is the very first time that we've performed this on kids. And again, there's a much larger precedent of it happening to cis children, which is one of the reasons why they know how some of these things work. Like it's the overwhelming consensus of the medical community. There's no exceptions to this. You do have exceptions in the form of the quack doctors, the one who are like, well, because I don't understand data and because I'm kind of still a bigot and because I hate trans people, sure, I'll sign off on this. Here you go, doctor, blah blah blah. You know, from Alabama, and trans kids aren't real, and there you go, stamp. Go pass legislation. You have an expert.
For the same reason they can't consent to sex with an adult.
What are you talking
Let's
about?
also get into the truth here. Many countries have has warned us about.
Oh man, nothing like a debunking when they have to really hit it home. This is what's correct. This is the right answer. I'm right.
Puberty blockers.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know that I need to get into this because he.
Oh wow. I called this one. Sweden. Sweden recommends against puberty blockers for children and setbacks to trans movement. I had only watched the first 15 minutes of this until I came up to that clip where he's talking about like race and the sports and race and racial genetic racial components to sports being real and stuff like that. And immediately I was like, oh, I'm gonna clip this and show everyone because yet another Crowderism. But boom, yeah, Sweden is often the one that is being brought on. By the way, was it Stewart or Oliver? One of the two of them also brought that up to explain, like, by the way, this is frequently being used by the right. This isn't indicative of whether or not the science itself is demonstrating that these are, again, safe procedures, overwhelmingly, we'll say for the majority of people who take them, with a few exceptions, of course, like any other form of medicine that is practiced. There's going to be certain people who have complications, so there are going to be instances. And the thing that Oliver was pointing out is that it can often be anticipated, in which case they would probably tell and recommend the kids in question to stop using the puberty blockers because the risks won't outweigh the rewards in those kind of things. Because Sweden itself has stopped using them, and again, based on a misinterpretation of the data itself, and they also utilized, I think in that Swedish decision, a handful of studies which are the ones that are pretty heavily debunked at this point. Like, your methodology was flawed, these aren't peer-reviewed, this is not published within a reputable scientific journal, you clearly had a confirmation bias that you were trying to achieve through this process, or the ones where they just straight out didn't interview children at all, they only interviewed adults, and like the response to that is like, well, yeah, because kids don't know what they want, they're also stupid.
Acknowledges that it can cause sterility.
He says, but maybe.
But in many cases, this can be mitigated. If it's 1%, it's enough to say nope.
Yeah. By the way, he said it's anticipated that this will be mitigated.
So if you take chemotherapy, you can become incredibly sick. You can become incredibly ill. You can actually, in some cases, exacerbate some of the worst parts of what is occurring to you. It is a very invasive procedure. You are literally filling your body with poison, actual fucking poison. The purpose being is that the cancer cells, which are replicating so rapidly, are going to be killed off alongside all of the other healthy cells. And it's so horrifying and intense and bad that some people opt not to even do it because of how horrifying it can be and the toll that it can take on your body. Do you still think that should be an option for people if they want? And do you still think it should be an option for their kids, for them to be able to make a decision with their children about whether or not they should even try? Should we even fight for this? Should we even fight for survival, or should we just give up and walk away from this? It's not something you would even consider. You wouldn't even be like, you know, not to mention for something like this, which is dramatically less invasive and less toxic on the body than chemotherapy or radiation therapy, stuff like that, involving where the idea is to kill healthy cells as well as cancerous cells that are multiplying too quickly. So if this is something that is shown to be, for the overwhelming majority of people who undergo it, reversible, safe, it can be anticipated if you're going to have complications or perhaps even things like sterility, then again, it's so weird that you're hyper-focusing on this form of healthcare, but every other form of healthcare would be appropriate within the grounds of you, I guess, approving it.
If you stop taking the medication. I'm like, John, you're quoting something from 2018 from October 1st. Do we not have any
0.03% of people who are treated with penicillin have severe allergic reactions. Does that mean no one should be allowed to access treatment? Exactly. I mean, well, the same thing would apply. Like if I brought up the vaccine itself and I was like, there are certain rare cases of people who have myocarditis, who have blood clots, complications that come from that. Should we then just ignore the overwhelming amount of people who do not get that, and it saves their lives and or reduces the worst possible effects of this potentially deadly disease?
Data between October 1st, 2018 and what is today, October 17th,
Yes.
2020. That's over 4 years, John.
That's a good question. We have a lot. We have from Sweden, we have from the UK, and then New Zealand. Just sometimes it's the information that they don't present to you. They quietly remove the description of safe and reversible from the Ministry of Health website. Gone now.
Yeah, I can't imagine that there's any real proof that your puberty would just start right back up as normal.
Oh, yeah.
There couldn't be like...
Well, thank you, doctor. It's nice. Again, I don't think you should be in the room just at all. I don't think you should be the one standing there. It's like, hey, it's nice to see you and your kid again. Oh yeah, we've been hanging out. It's just a thing now. So I don't think that they should be getting medical procedures that are being recommended by the doctor, because I have a feeling. I've just got a feeling about that one. Yeah, it doesn't feel really good for me. So I just don't want your kid to do that. Okay, so that's where I belong in the conversation.
Years of testing of this to actually know that. I just can't imagine
There has
that
been.
even if so, could
This
you
is not
prove that it was the
experimental.
exact thing
Right.
that it was supposed to be? I don't think that's possible.
No, it's
right?
exactly. In the absence of what would be a natural process,
You couldn't.
you
couldn't
can't
prove it.
necessarily know what outcomes are part of your manipulation.
Right. There's no way.
But Steven, if you were growing up, okay, and I believe this, you're a cis guy, you're a cis dude, that's fine. Fellow cis dude here, both a couple cis men. If you were in high school and you're suddenly about to go through puberty, terrible time, awkward, high school's already pretty vicious, you know, you got the acne, all that kind of stuff. Your voice starts to change. You're starting to try and notice the girls, but you can't talk to them because they're always socially. Trust me, I've been in it. I know what it's like. What if in that process you started turning into a woman? Like against your desires, like you looked into the mirror and all of a sudden you had growing breasts, and all of a sudden you were not getting a deeper voice, you were getting a much higher voice, and then your hair started to grow very long, and you were suddenly recognizing like, what is going on here? And you weren't in fact growing larger male genitalia. You in fact did not have male genitalia at all. A lot of things were suddenly changing, and you're like, oh my god, what is happening to my body? Wouldn't that be strange? Wouldn't that ruin your experience? Wouldn't that make your life much harder? Wouldn't you suddenly be like, holy shit, I can't even try and pass anymore by cutting my hair properly, or by like, you know, doing other things, or tucking, or whatever it is, or binding straps, or whatever I need to do. It's moving faster than I have ability to hide. This is really messing with my mind. I'm pretty sure you'd want there to be an option. Someone could tell you, well, by the way, there happens to be a medical intervention that we can do that can prevent this and let you live a far more normal life, and a far more happy one, far more fulfilling one. But unfortunately, there's this guy on YouTube who doesn't want you to do that. There's a YouTube guy who makes money from selling mugs full of dog's cum, and he doesn't want you to have the ability to have these medical interventions or procedures. So unfortunately, yeah, I know, you gotta live with it. You gotta just I don't know, just find a way, you know.
Jeff Goldblum knew this.
Yeah, he told me.
There it is. Now, also, you should note, this is the problem with the propaganda that comes from the left, is you have the John Olivers there. They spout this nonsense. And then I did, and you can go to louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. One of the advantages is everything that's been banned from YouTube, to the tune of hundreds of millions of views, is available there. Oh, this is another thing where it's just, again, an appeal to emotional fallacy, where he says, you know, no kids are just casually dropping in to get surgery, you bigot.
Some teams.
No, it's just how healthcare works. I think you just don't understand how healthcare works. I think, you know what's weird is you probably do in other respects. Like, I'm sure you probably brought your own kids to the doctor at a point or two. But like for this, I think you feel that for this and this alone, there's an exception where people are going into the hospital with their kids and they're just being like brought in for surgery on the spot. It's like, I think I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. It's like, well, do you like playing with boys' toys, and do you like playing with boys or girls' toys? Which one? Sometimes both. It's like, oh, yeah, no, you're definitely a trans woman. We need to begin surgery immediately. This is what's happening. Because, like, again, it should be something that is just regularly done with the parents, the kids, just them and the doctor.
May be eligible, for instance, for top surgery or chest masculinization.
I thought none of them were. Medical intervention. What
Not
happened?
only is that pretty rare, it, like all of this,
there's different periods of development and growth for human beings, and during those different periods, we treat their medicines differently. Like a 5-year-old should not be hitting the gym every single day to grow as much muscle mass as possible. It will break their developing bones. It will stunt their growth. It's not a healthy thing. So there's different periods in time when different medical recommendations are made to you. That's why, as it was explained to you, there's an entire process here. At the very start, there is absolutely nothing outside of just not being a dick. Like, I'm saying that to people who want to misgender children or who want to just treat children as if they aren't the gender they are. All you'd have to do is have some gender affirming care and acknowledgement. It would be like, oh, do you want to grow your hair out? Do you want to be referred to as she, her, or they, them? Do you want us to call you by a different name, perhaps, than the one that you were given, because that one creates a sense of gender dysphoria for you? Things like that. That's it. That's a different phase. He goes through all the different steps along the way. At a certain point, when you are a teenager and you are getting closer to being an adult, but you are still a teenager, yes, you have the option to have that. It happens to cis kids. I had a cis girl in my high school, a teenager, who had very large breasts, had to get a breast reduction surgery because it was giving her back problems. That's a thing that happens. You wouldn't step in the middle of that one. You wouldn't be like, oh, no, she's not allowed. She can't do that. No, I'm stepping in. I'm saying this is mutilation. You're mutilating your titties. I have an opinion on this one. Like, no, you wouldn't do that. Well, at least I hope you wouldn't. I don't want to put anything past fucking Crowder.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.